Hey everybody, Andy Cumbo Floyd here. It's Thursday morning. I have no idea what time it is. That's just the reality. But I recently have gotten a couple questions from potential clients who want to hire me as an editor about, well, they weren't really about this, but they caused me to realize that some people don't really have a clear picture of what an editor does. And so I thought I would take a couple minutes just to explain how an editor typically works. Now, of course, this is not true for every editor. There are people who do things very differently, and that's great. So if you need something very different, go look for those people. But most of us do one of three, maybe four kinds of editing, depending on how we define them. So I define the kinds of editing as developmental, which is helping you create the story, helping you figure out how to structure it, maybe looking at things like what point of view you're going to use, helping you build out the content that you might have already sketched out in the first place. So that's developmental editing. Content editing is more specific than that. So it's usually done on a pretty complete manuscript, and it's about helping people flesh out particular scenes, maybe do more description, help them explain how a particular character works, look at things like pacing and plot and setting, things that are already established in the book. So it's a little bit more about a book that is largely drafted and needs some improvement. That's content editing. Then you have line editing, and line editing is looking at things like how the sentences are put together, where the paragraph breaks are, how you use various sentence structures. It can also be about mechanics and grammar and making sure things are correct, but it's usually pretty much stuck with the word by word, sentence by sentence outline structure of your book. So it's much more detail oriented. And then there's proofreading, and proofreading is the last thing that you do to a manuscript. It's about making sure it's correct, making sure it has no typos, making sure the formatting is standardized. All of that happens in the final stages of proofreading. So I do developmental and content editing. Occasionally I do line editing and proofreading for academic writers, but primarily when I'm working with creative writers, I'm doing developmental and content editing. So that's what editors often do. Now, typically an editor will work with a writer in one of two ways, either section by section, say chapter by chapter of a book, or a full manuscript. Most of the editors I know prefer to work with a full manuscript, unless maybe you're doing developmental editing, and in that case maybe you have an outline or some sketches, and then you're having a lot of conversations with somebody to help flesh your book out and make it more full. So most people will work with a full manuscript. Editors will do whatever level of content, developmental, line, or proofreading that you hire them to do. And some editors work on a per hour basis, so they will track their time and charge out by the hour. Some people work on a per project basis, which is how I work. So I find out how many words is in a manuscript, and then I do a mathematical formula and figure out what the per project cost is going to be. So therefore you get a flat rate when you work with me. So what an editor can do though is primarily this: help make your book more of what you want it to be. Help you maybe think about market and how well your book is working for the market that you intend it for. Those are some of the things an editor does. So they help improve your book, and a good editor is helping you improve it to be what you want it to be, not to necessarily change it into something else. I've read many books, not for current clients, from a long time ago, that I thought were interesting, and I helped the writers create more of what they wanted, but I didn't necessarily like the books or think they were particularly marketable. But that's not my job. My job is to make the book more of what you want it to be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that sometimes an editor can help advise you for the market. And by that I mean they can help you figure out aspects of your book that would make it more marketable. So what are the standard tropes, say, for a thriller? Or if you're writing a memoir, what makes a memoir most marketable? Those things some editors do, some don't. So you need to ask that question if that's something you're looking for. But what an editor cannot do and will not do if they are reputable is assure any level of success or sales for your book. That's not their job. They don't that's not what we do. What we do is make your book better. We don't help you necessarily market it, although there are some editors that also have marketing portions of their work. But even then, they're not going to assure you or guarantee you anything because that's not possible. There's so many factors that go into what make a book successful that no editor in her or his right mind would say they can guarantee anything. So an editor is not going to guarantee you results. And most editors are going to have a pretty defined scope of work that relates to maybe how many times they're going to read the manuscript. I typically only quote out for one read because I'm very attentive when I do an edit, and I don't really know that I'm going to be able to be as distant or objective when I read a book again. So typically I'm quoting out for one read, and then sometimes I'll work with an editor, a writer after I edit a manuscript for some sort of coaching or consultation. But that's usually on a per hour basis and a separate part from the scope of the original edit. Now, some editors will work with you, say for the range of your project, but that's going to be a much higher cost because that's going to take a lot of their time and largely be beyond their control. So what if you decide you want to take a 2-month break? Well, and then you want to come back in 2 months and you've asked the editor to stay on for the whole scope of the book. That's hard, because then you've asked somebody to just sit and wait for you to be ready. So often editors are just going to say they're going to do this many reads of a text with this kind of follow-up, and then that's going to be done. If you want to hire them again, they will probably be more than happy to accommodate you or refer you to somebody that is going to be more objective about your book. But an editor is not a co-writer, an editor is not a coach, an editor is not a publisher. Our jobs are to help you make your books better. That's what we do. Now, many of us do other things. I also coach writers, but I do that separate from the scope of my editing, and it has a very defined, discrete set of boundaries around that work. So I just want to share that with you guys in case you're looking to hire an editor. Tomorrow I will do a quick video on how to determine whether an editor is reputable and how to get a good sense of them if you're thinking to hire somebody. So I hope that's helpful. If you have questions, please feel free to post them in the comments below. I will be happy to answer them. Thanks so much.